You never quite know when you're gonna need an assist out there on the water, kinda like this famous yacht from Chicago did in Boynton Beach this past week, and we'll get into this story a little further in the episode, but welcome back guys to this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. Our first story to make the boating news this week is actually going to take us to the coast of Alabama, where this was the scene just a little over a week and a half ago when a U.S. Coast Guard helicopter was dispatched to the Carnival Dream to assist with a medevac when all of a sudden the helicopter found itself in distress as well. Here we can see the helicopter trying to hover over the Carnival Dream. They've actually already dropped their rescue swimmer onto the deck, but here we can see they're struggling to maintain position as the weather continues to deteriorate and they have to abandon the rescue mission. But strong downdrafts almost send the helicopter into the drink. As can be seen here, the crew calls it exceptionally close to being pushed down into the water. Fortunately, at the last moment, the crew is able to regain control of the helicopter and pull it back up to altitude. Unfortunately, due to the deteriorating weather conditions though, the crew did have to abandon the mission for the moment. They did wait 6 hours for the weather conditions to improve, and then they turned back out to the Carnival Dream where they were able to successfully pick up the rescue swimmer and the patient without any injuries. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to the country of Colombia, where a very expensive venture happened this past week, costing somebody over $100 million. This is the scene when the Colombian Navy, in a joint operation with the Air Force, are reporting they captured the largest semi-submersible submarine they've ever encountered. This particular vessel happened to be carrying approximately 3 tons of narcotics worth over $103 million, with 3 crew on board. Now, the 3 crew on board were claiming the cartel had forced them to do this, but they got exceptionally lucky in this one because as the crews arrived to interdict the submarine, they noticed the vessel was taking on water and was actually sinking. Crews worked quickly and diligently to get the 3 crew members off safely and of course get product off the vessel also. They did everything they could to attempt to salvage the submarine, but unfortunately after several attempts the vessel did wind up sinking. Once again, this was the largest one they've ever encountered. This vessel was over 100 foot long and as we already mentioned was able to successfully carry over 3 tons of cargo in the hull. But this was a pretty expensive venture for somebody, losing over $100 million for the product and of course the vessel. And speaking of expensive ventures, our crews happened to catch this down in Boynton Beach this past week. This is the famous yacht that is owned by the owner of the Chicago Blackhawks, and unfortunately it wound up on the dock blocker, a sandbar we've made famous on the Miami Boat Ramps channel that's located in between the Boynton Beach Inlet, which can be seen in the background here, and the Harvey E. Oyer Boat Ramp, which is one of the busiest boat ramps in the Boynton area, causing this to always be kind of a wild scene around the sandbar. But we were filming at the boat ramp when somebody at the dock yelled at us and said, "Hey, you're missing it," and pointed out to this scene here where Towboat is trying to go ahead and get this yacht off of the dock blocker. Once again, this yacht belongs to the owner of the Chicago Blackhawks. The vessel is actually called Blackhawk. The 123-foot feed ship was originally launched in 1971. It was commissioned by Arthur Wirtz, the founder of the Wirtz Corporation and also the owner of the Chicago Blackhawks at the time. The Wirtz family still owns the Blackhawks today, as well as this vessel, as it was one of Arthur's dying wishes that the family could not sell its original land estate, his wife's 1961 Rolls-Royce, and they also had to keep this vessel. And to this day, almost 50 years after it was launched, the family still maintains this vessel and does everything it can to keep it in pristine condition. The vessel was Arthur's pride and joy as he designed nearly every single inch of the boat, including the hull. The vessel was originally launched in Europe but did make the Atlantic crossing from Europe over to the United States down to South Florida, where the vessel currently stays today. But the family has spared no expense on this boat. In fact, many reports have stated that this vessel, if you stepped on it today, looks better than it did when it originally launched back in 1971. This scene lasted for a little over an hour and a half. Towboat went out here and tried pulling this vessel almost from every single direction to try and get it off the dock blocker. They do eventually, after several attempts, get the boat moving a little bit, but the vessel does to have appeared to suffered some sort of damage. Once they actually do get it off the sandbar here, the vessel appears to have lost steering, and they wind up having to try and drop anchor in the channel of the Boynton Inlet. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the condensed version of this though. We've trimmed down the footage a little bit just to where you'll get to see the actual pull-off and them attempting to try and anchor in the Boynton Inlet. They do wind up struggling there as well, but once again, the family spared no expense on this boat. I'm sure whatever damages are occurred here, they will be repaired. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. If you ever see anything crazy happening out on your waterways, be sure to hit us up on Facebook or Instagram and let us know, and you might see your stories over here. And if you haven't already, go ahead and drop an anchor on the subscribe button.